Another week down in the NFL, and the picture just got a little bit clearer in some cases. We'll get into it next on Beyond the Locker Room. So as usual, another week in the NFL, lots of crazy stuff going on. I'm going to give you a breakdown as usual. I'm your host, Brian, but I'm going to give you a breakdown of what I see here from 3 games and kind of like maybe the bigger picture of what we're seeing. So let's start with, I think, in my mind, kind of the headline of the weekend. Pretty much, are the Chiefs in trouble? Is this kind of the cracking we're seeing of the dynasty? Yep, I might put the jinx on it, so be it. But I'm willing to take that chance from what I've seen so far this year, even hints of it from last year. The Chiefs' offense is looking pedantic at times. Where they're scratching to go together 19, 20, 21-point games. As a Steelers fan for many years, I know that style of play where you're just trying to get enough points so your defense could cover you. Just to get over 20 points so your defense could cover you. That's kind of like what I saw there. They lost 22-19 to Denver this weekend. Once again, hit 19, got L. So it's going to get, this is something that's been kind of a trend for them where they've been just scratching out wins for the last year. And they've been very fortunate last season with that. But, maybe the luck has run out when it comes to closing games late. And I think this is something to kind of keep a hold of. Like, they still have they have issues of getting the big play, getting explosive plays, closing out in the red zone. So even though Mahomes' numbers don't look bad in this case here and look fairly efficient, it's not getting you in the end zone. And I think at some point, whenever they do make a mistake, their margin for error is so high, they can't afford to make any mistakes on offense because, boom, any sort of extra points that or good field position give to the other team, it puts more pressure on their defense. Broncos' defense has been consistent, from Vic Fangio days to now with Peyton. The defense has always been the stalwart of that side of the ball when it comes to Denver. The offense is slowly picking up. Bo Nix has had his moments, and he played well enough and steady enough, with a good ground attack and they mixing up with his passing and his movement that they were able to keep Kansas City off balance just enough. So, props to Denver. They now have control of this division. I think right now, at the moment, they Buffalo might be the teams to deal with in this AFC, and we'll see where things move going forward. I know the Colts are still in the mix, but I'm still not sold on the Colts, as I've said most of the season. But from the Chiefs' perspective, right now things are looking very murky. You're in the middle of the pack. They're on the outside looking in right now, and when you start looking to need help to get in, that's trouble. And when we talk about the next team, that team in this case, even though they have the tiebreaker on them, is now starting to roll. So we'll see where things stand there. When it comes to Kansas City, I think could we have a change in the guard? Possibly. Could this be the end of the dynasty? If it is, I think you'll see some big changes. I wouldn't be surprised. Kelsey formally retires and calls it a day. I think at that point, then they will start getting very aggressive in the draft. They'll look for some serious playmakers from the receiving position. Obviously, replace their tight end situation. Defensively, I think they're okay. Secondary is pretty good still. There's no two ways about that. But they could get, probably get another young pass rusher. Jones isn't getting any younger, so I think there's ways they can actually still improve in the offseason. But right now, they're hanging on for dear life. Man. If you're a Chiefs fan, Arrowhead fans, you're hanging on for dear life right now in the AFC. As I said before, Denver in a great position. We'll see what Denver does moving forward with the second half of the season. If they could close things out, they got some help in this case here with the Chargers, who are starting to flame out right now. So we'll see where things stand with them. Game number 2, Ravens defeat the Browns, 23-16. Browns led most of this game actually. Gabriel got hurt. I think he got hurt in the middle of the game, probably in mid-third quarter, I think it was. Shedeur Sanders came in to replace him, and we'll get into some of that in a second. But as from the Baltimore side of things, the big man's been back for a few weeks, Lamar Jackson, and they've been rolling now. They got their head back in the mix, is starting to get above water a little bit. And they're still hunting down the Steelers right now for that first place for that division title, which obviously gives you home field for at least one round. So It's going to be tough for the Steelers to hold on with Baltimore starting to get their groove going. The defense is starting to come together a bit too in the last few weeks. That's something that has not been the case. And they're mixing up with the passion rush very, very much. Timely runs by Lamar, which is something they seem to find a way to struggle with. I don't get that. Because it's not like Lamar, even though Lamar is coming back for injury, for the most part, Lamar's been pretty healthy for the most part. If he's gotten hurt, he hasn't gotten hurt a lot of times for running. He's gotten hurt being in the pocket. So I don't understand why they don't just run him a bit more. But as a Steelers fan, I don't mind that one bit. That's cool by me. When it comes to the other side of the ball, Cleveland. Their defense looked great. That's always going to be, Myles Garrett, breaking records as usual. He's definitely earned, he definitely has earned the money that he got. And I think he's going to still be great. But you really do wonder if there's time to maybe consider to be a little more bolder and maybe move on from him, as strange as that may sound, because I don't know where this team is going right now. They're not bad at skill positions so much. It always comes back to the quarterback position. And I mentioned this a few weeks ago when we focused on our Browns game. And I said it then, it might have been Browns Steelers. And I said at the time, I said, hey, there's a common thread through all these quarterbacks. Mayfield, as Bomani calls him, the nasty man, Watson. The two rookies, Gabriel and Sanders. Flacco to some extent. Well, Pickett's Pickett. He's just garbage. But everybody else, you have to ask yourself, they seem to always be a little bit worse in Cleveland. So you have to ask yourself at some point, what is the common trait? Well, the common trait is Stefanski. And why I say so is that game in the second half with Sanders was in. That was hot garbage I was watching. Hot, stinking on a July summer day garbage. Why I say so? This is why I say so. It's 2025. No half-decent offensive coordinator or head coach is going to go in there and pretend it's 1972 and we're going to run on first down and run on second down and then put my quarterback in a long third down position. Geez, I wonder what will happen. Nothing. No movement out of the pocket for most part. Sanders is not, he's not as fleet as foot as Lamar Jackson, but he can move. Get him out. They did it once, I think, for one play. And then I think another play they tried a bootleg of some sort and it kind of got blown up because they just spammed it with a blitz. But at the same time, I thought, that they didn't give their quarterback much of a chance to do anything on the board. Not that Sanders played great himself. He made some poor decisions at times, holding on the ball too much. Even the one where I think he's trying to throw it to a receiver, obviously got picked. It was no harm, no foul because nothing came of it. But those things, the speed of the game type of things where over time that will improve because he gets used to the speed. But they did him no favors of putting him in the downs that they put him in. No favors at all. Now, let me get this Rex Ryan nonsense here that came up yesterday. Some people in the media have lost their damn mind when it comes to Shedeur Sanders. It's like some type of crazy derangement syndrome. I understand it. I mean, when you are breathing hot fire like Rex Ryan was on Get Up yesterday, when you're sitting there going like, okay, you're wondering what's got him so angry? What, he's sitting on the bench after the end of the game because he's upset because they lost? That now warrants in this case here where we're breathing fire? It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. He's had being in his bonnet from day one when it comes to Sanders. And I don't know, man. They're going to talk to him about that because if he can't be objective about the game or the player, then maybe he just needs to skip that segment when they're doing Browns games because it's ridiculous. Now, the given contrast, I think for folks in this case think I'm being too easy on Sanders or too harsh on Rex, let's put it that way. Let's see in this case here when you take a peek at what Jeff Saturday had to say. And the reason why I think Jeff Saturday's comments are so informative and illuminating is Jeff Saturday's one of the best centers in the last 20 years. Played on one of the most potent offenses of its time. So when he says these things, it has a little more weight than Joe Blow or even Rex Ryan, who's a defensive guy when it's all said and done. He made a great point. It's like, listen, man, you could throw a guy in there that's never played with this group before. The snap counts they're not familiar with. You got to find ways to find out to get better protection for him. And instead of, as I mentioned as well too, Have a little bit more creativity to kind of mix it up in this case here so you don't have a third and longs. It was ridiculous coaching. And I said before, there's a commonality with all these quarterbacks. They tend to get progressively worse once they come to Cleveland. Whatever you want to say about any of them, the facts are the facts. And these young quarterbacks are not, be it Gabriel or be it Sanders, you're doing them a disservice in this case of keeping this dude around any longer, because Stefanski, in my mind, he's had more than enough chances with this team in my mind. I don't even know why he still has a job, to be honest with you. Like, I don't know what pictures he got on, folks, and what the story is. I don't get it. It's not like he's a former Super Bowl champion where it's like, okay, it's Bill Parcells. We'll let the old man keep running this thing, the big tuna, and see what happens because we know his track record, his pedigree. Who the hell is Kevin Stefanski when it's all said and done? Like, come on. Really? But it's Cleveland, so I expect not much. Haslam as an owner, a little dubious on that front. Just leave it that way. So, like, when it comes to these dudes, I'm not losing any sleep when it comes to Cleveland. The best thing could happen for both young quarterbacks is that they get traded to actually teams that know how to actually develop quarterbacks. I'll say San Francisco, I'll say Green Bay, teams that know how to develop quarterbacks. I could pick a few more teams that have that natural instinct of developing quarterbacks. Because this nonsense I'm seeing here, this ain't gonna end well for these young quarterbacks. Tell you that right now. It's not gonna end well for them at one bit. Now, to the last game, which I must admit was a Sunday night game. It wasn't a pretty one. Boy, was it not pretty. Lions, Eagles. Eagles win 16-9. A bit of a snooze fest. I ain't gonna lie. I know the win was part of it, but the Giants played the win that day, as well too, earlier that day, and it was a much more compelling game than what we saw here. The Eagles, this offensive situation with the Eagles, man. Like, I don't know what's going on here. Like, they need to find some type of, like I said before, they had identity crisis, what I said earlier in an earlier episode. They need to figure out themselves real soon. They're 8-2, which shows you how talented the team is, but they need to figure this out real fast. Some of the passes that Hurts was throwing, you can't put that in the wind, dude. Like, it's like some of these passes where behind the receiver, too low for the receiver. I don't know, man. Saquon Barkley, they seem they've forgotten that he's a running back. I don't know. Like, they show these numbers at the beginning of the game. Like, it's almost like two different players, how the production from one season to the next. So they need to figure that out as well, too. Defensively, they're getting better as the season goes on. Once Carter's not spitting on anybody, they seem to be okay. The defense is going to be the thing that's going to ride them at least throughout the playoffs until this offense can figure it out before they get got. As far as the other side goes, the Lions are right now looking at a possibility of, they gotta be careful, man. Because I'm not saying they're gonna be out of the playoffs, but they gotta be careful because Chicago's playing well. Green Bay is still playing well. So you're gonna you could potentially get two. You're gonna get two for that division. That means you don't want to be the third man in that division because now you're in some trouble. You're gonna have San Francisco. You potentially have the Rams or the Seahawks coming from the West, and all of a sudden now you're down to the 4 spots. You get the NFC East champions, which would be the Eagles. That's 5 teams right there, and now you're fighting for 2 spots. And it'll be you, the 3rd team from the West, and possibly I think that's pretty much it because the NFC East is a hot mess, and the South, of course. You get the division champion from the South, so you got 1 spot left. And that 1 spot could go up for grabs for anybody. Right now in the South, after you get past Tampa Bay, it's not real pretty out there. I mean, Atlanta. I must admit, I tweeted out about on Sunday. The Panthers put together a nice little season, so watch them, the dark horse, to make the playoffs. So be very wary, Detroit. You're not guaranteed for a spot in the playoffs. You keep playing like this. Goff. I'm sorry, man. Lions fans, he ain't it, man. He's not it. I have not watched a big game with him pretty much since some of the Rams playoff games in the on their way to the Super Bowl. But in the Lions jersey, he has not looked great in big games, man. Against top talent and against another top quarterback, it hasn't looked good. And I don't know. I like Dan Campbell. I like what he's about. I like his get down. I do like him a lot, and I always kind of have a soft spot for the Lions to do well. A lot because of their history. A buddy of mine is a big Lions fan. I love to see him have some happiness when it comes to them, and Dan Campbell as well too. So I would love to see them kind of, maybe get to a Super Bowl finally, but I don't know if this quarterback is it, man. And that is something that's going to be the pressing issue as we move into the second half of the season. Locker room takes, a quick one today. I would say, I mentioned that's the South just now, the NFC South. Carolina looking really good. A lot of people had Bryce Young written off, and he's turning into a pretty solid quarterback for you, and kind of could build a franchise around. Even with his size, he's doing really well, and I gotta give him props because I don't know if a lot of people are giving him his props, but I am gonna give him his props, man. So good on him. The resilience, the amount of people catcalling and heckling him and giving him all sorts of heck. Good on him for persevering. So, Panthers got something to look forward to, and they got a nice little team there, as well as Atlanta, actually, I would say, too, even though they took the L. Penix is a nice quarterback, and they got some great skilled players they've been drafting the last few years. Robinson, Pitts, and the others, London. So they have some nice pieces. So, the NFC South is going to be a fun division in the coming years, man, with these young quarterbacks. So check that out. That's the only locker room take I have for today. Once again, guys, you can always find me on that place called X, Blue Sky, Facebook, and of course right here on YouTube, where you can like, comment, and subscribe right down below. We appreciate the support. And once again, man, keep it locked right here. Peace.